Okay, there we are. We're live.
Hello,
So, how are we
everybody.
doing?
I'm doing good. What about you, Yogi?
Yeah, not too bad at all, my man. Not too bad at all. Busy with polo, so it's hard work at the moment.
Tell them how many horses you shot today.
We did 39 today.
Oh my gosh, that is a lot. Is
Yeah,
that full shoes?
yeah, full shoes, but it's not just me, obviously. We got there's four of us today, so it's
Oh, nice.
yeah, so it's not too bad. What about you? You've been busy today?
No, today we were running around. My guys are out working. Jeb, Nathan, and Colton are out servicing some local accounts, and I'm just working on some other stuff, getting ready for my therapeutic exam on Monday at the AFA convention. So just studying.
Yeah, nice. So this week we're going to be talking about high-low, right?
Yeah. I remember we had such great feedback the last few times. This has been a lot of fun, and this is what you guys, the audience, has asked for. So I can't wait to dive into this. My approach, as always, is pretty simple, and I can't wait to see what Yogi brings to the table on going in the deep end. So,
So how much high-low do you see in your practice, Lee?
so my practice, I don't know if I'd call it a practice, but my business is very different. Like I think there are a lot of high-low cases, but in hindsight though, like most horses that come to us, the majority of them have went through a few people and are struggling, and so we get a lot more therapeutic horses. I mean, we have higher end horses maybe have issues of some kind, and seems like high low usually falls into that category because they're hard to shoe. And I would say that my answer would be unfair because I feel like there's a lot more than there is, but I don't feel like any 2 feet are completely the same. Do you?
No, I think actually there's a lot more high-low out there than we would first imagine. I know. I mean, I with the polo horses, I see a lot of high-low, and um, they're not therapeutic cases. So I definitely think it is quite common. Obviously, there's lots of debate as to what causes it, right? So um, I know that a lot of thoroughbreds have high-low because one of the theories is that because they go one way around the track, they end up with one limb longer than the other. So I've certainly seen a lot of high-low in thoroughbreds. I don't know if you've experienced the same thing.
Yeah. I've got my own theories on why this happens. I would think it just comes down to asymmetric balance, I guess, at the end of the day. And there's lots of different versions of that, meaning that they're just going one way, doing one thing too much. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things that's been shown by research. Definitely, I think there's lots of different there's research out there. Some of it talks about going all the way back to you know the feeding behavior of the foal on the mother, and 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. And so some of it can go back to laterality all the way back to being a foal.
Meaning laterality, meaning just prone to be right-handed or left-handed or
Yeah,
right-handed.
exactly. So having a side that they prefer to graze, the grazing as well, and feeding. So having 1 foot forward and 1 foot back, and then over time that creates a high-low. You've got the theory of actual limb length disparity as well, where you physically have one limb longer than the other, and that's actually been shown in the thoroughbred studies, where they actually have one metacarpal is actually physically longer than the other leg. So there is actually a limb length disparity, which then leads to the feet having to be different
So I think
angles.
I feel like that's a realistic thing. How often do you think just the one limb being shorter or longer than the other happens?
Well, it's not something I've measured. I notice high low all the time, but it's not something that I've then gone and measured physical lengths of bones. So that would be a very interesting thing to do, but I've not actually done it myself. But you can see the knock-on effects all the way up to the shoulder, and I'll show you some images of that. So you can physically see how it changes angles all the way up the limb, which would create a functional limb length disparity for sure. Whether it's physically different lengths in bones is something to actually be measured, but you definitely see it in terms of the angles up the limb in the shoulder and such. So what now the question now comes to what's your treatment protocol, right?
So the question was, I'm getting comments on our post right now.
Oh, okay, yeah. Did you want to look at one of them first, or
no? Finish your question, please.
Okay. The question then moves on to what do we do about these high lows? So have you got a set protocol for it?
Yeah, so my take home message to this, I think for the viewing, maybe it'd be good to tell them at the beginning what we want them to know, and then if they want to get the meat and potatoes in the middle, they can do that. So I'll answer it, you answer it. How about that? I'll go first. So
okay.
I truly believe that shoeing high-low horses is actually pretty simple if you individualize their feet. Like, don't even look at the left front, give the right front exactly what it needs, and then shoe the left front exactly what it needs. And how that gets tricky is when you're talking about a performance horse. You want them to feel the same, look the same, move the same. So because you want that horse to, if it's a judged event, you want them to move the same, or if you're a timed event, you want them to feel the same. So I feel like you want to put similar shoes on them, but the fun part is I feel like both feet typically like a little bit of breakover enhancement, and the low foot is always going to want to be lower. So you need to go after that like a low foot, and the high foot wants to be a little higher, meaning higher heels. Once you bring those heels down, now it needs breakover too. So I feel like if you shoe them like that, and sometimes, sole depth's an issue on the high foot. So adding a flat leather pad with a salad bowl shoe, creating depth on the high foot while appropriately handling breakover on the high foot is great. And we'll even put a leather wedge pad sometimes on the low foot, or depending on the palmar angle, we'll put a flat leather pad on that too, to take some of the strain off of the heels and disperse the load like some low feet like. So they get along really well in that package. Each horse is an individual though, and they don't all need pads for sure. And the reality is most barrel horses, performance horses, do better without pads. But if you've got heel failure, you got to do something. If you got a lack of sole depth, you got to do something.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd like to answer it by first talking about the biomechanics of what happens with the high low, because I want to go into a little bit more of depth from my the understanding the science behind my intervention. So I'm gonna show some slides now. So I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago now with Dr. Hausler talking about compensation. So if anyone wants to, we'll go into real depth on this stuff in that webinar with him. But I want to talk about the compensations that happen as a result of high-low, because when you understand the compensations, it gives you a little bit of understanding of what you want to do intervention-wise, right? So if we look at lameness, right? So when a horse is lame, they have compensatory mechanisms. Okay, so if you've got a front limb lameness, the horse compensates with using the contralateral hind limb. Okay, and what's really interesting is that that compensation mechanism requires the stiffening of the spine and the contralateral limb to work. So it creates a whole body compensation mechanism. And that's talking about lameness. But what's really interesting is that a high-low actually creates the same biomechanics as lameness does in one foot. So what we can see with lameness is that we end up with horses that are lame end up having back problems. And this is because the back has to compensate for the lameness. So if we look at high-low, we end up with the same biomechanical implications, right? So when you have a high-low, we've seen from research such as Hobbs et al. 2018 and other studies, Wiggers et al. As well. When you have high-low, you have asymmetrical propulsive forces. Okay, so the amount of propulsion, the amount of forward movement that the feet are creating is not the same. So the low foot creates a higher net braking force, right? So if you're driving along in your car and you've got a brake half on one of your wheels, what's your car going to do? It's going to pull one way, right? It's always going to pull one way. And so what the horse does is the horse has to stiffen their spine and then use the diagonal hind to realign themselves, to stay straight. And so it's exactly the same compensation as what happens when they have a lameness in one front foot. They do the same compensation. They stiffen their spine and they use the contralateral hind limb to straighten themselves up. Now, the problem is that this creates maladaptations. Okay, this creates long-term problems in these horses. So we've seen that from this study here. This is from Ridgway 2016. He says because of this twisting that has to happen in the horse, they end up with lots of problems in the base of the neck and in the lumbosacral region. Okay, it's because it's caused by this twisting that occurs because of the high-low in the front feet. So they end up with a lot of problems in these areas. And this is something that I see all the time in high-low. I don't know if this is something you see, you've noticed, Lee, but when you have the high-low, you have very asymmetrical shoulders. Can you see that? Absolutely. So you have the right shoulder is much more bulbous, and that's associated with the lower foot. But also, if you look, you can see how the spine is curved. And this is that same twisting that is happening as a result of the asymmetrical propulsive forces. So is that something you've noticed, Lee, in these high-lows?
Yes.
Is the shoulders and stuff?
Yes, absolutely. And we actually got a question about that too. But I feel like a big thing in the performance horse world is kissing spine, SI, just a lot of back problems that are new. I guess, I don't know, I hesitate to say new, but common. How about that? But,
yeah.
But yes, I definitely see the shoulders often, the twisting of the spine. You know, I haven't seen as much of that, but I'm always surprised that the shoulder is bigger on the low foot. I would think that it would be the high foot initially, but interesting.
Yeah, so I'll carry on. So this is here I did a deep literature dive into all of the literature that talks about the what happens as a result of high-low. So you have all these sorts of different things that are going on. But the important thing, the kind of take-home message here for me is that high-low is not just a hoof balance issue. It becomes a whole body issue because the whole body has to compensate for the asymmetrical propulsive forces that are created by the front end. So I've got a case here because this case is a really good way of expressing what I do. So my treatment method. So this looks like it might have cut out some of my thing, but I'll read it. Everyone can see it, but I'll read it.
Hey, can I ask a question before you start though?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so Susan made a comment and I'm just responding right now. So she has time and Zach and Laszlo can comment while you're reading that. So Susan has a 7-year-old gelding that she's owned since he was 3. He's had a heck of a time with saddle fit. This has led to figuring out that his left shoulder is larger, which has led to seeing that the right heel is lower than the left. So I think she's saying that the left shoulder is bigger and the left is the high foot. Is that accurate, Susan? So I've been studying what to do, and there's so much conflicting opinions between vets, farriers, and physio practitioners. Zach always says, thanks for tagging. And Zach says the depth on the high foot is key. And Laszlo says, did you guys ever don orthopedic shoeing?
Not sure what that. that question.
Can you give us another go at that question, Laszlo?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
While you're giving us another go, I'll quickly read this and then I'll show the case, because it's a really interesting case. So looking back, this is the blurb from the client, right? So looking back, I believe T has always had compensatory issues ever since coming off the racetrack 6 years ago. Okay, so here we go straight away. We can see this is an ex-thoroughbred racehorse, right? Slowly deflating in his thoracic sling with occasional bouts of irregularity. In 2019, it compounded to a level he no longer wanted to do his job as an event horse. Multiple lameness exams with x-rays, neurological exams, and one SI injection later. So that links into what you were saying, Lee, about issues in the back. He was labelled sound, healthy, and needing to go back to full work. And I was labelled as being too cautious and sensitive. Enter a new farrier, a new chiropractor, a new diet, a new trainer, and lots of body work later. He returned to dressage competition in 2021, but his body condition and muscling continued to stay stagnant, which took me back to the drawing board. Throughout the year, he struggled to find his own balance without my constant intervention. He would become anxious when asked for any gait except the walk. T struggled to find a true connection through his back without curling his neck and bracing his pole. And my saddle always pulled to the right, no matter what I did. With the halted progress, we went digging deeper, which led to x-rays of his feet. In February 2023, we're fortunate to have a clinic with Yogi, who personally trimmed T's feet. Through significant changes in trimming and shoeing, T immediately was much more comfortable in his posture. He can finally hold his own balance without my constant intervention. He can easily connect through his back with a stretching neck and a soft pole. His steps are organized, relaxed and stable, and my saddle stays right in the middle of his back. I've never felt a version of this horse. I can't see the rest of it, but you get the idea. So this is not to show off what I did, but this is just to show how she says significant changes, but actually it was very subtle changes, and this horse had high-low, and you can see the devastating effect that this high-low was having on the horse's whole body here. So what did we do? Okay, so this was the low foot. You can see on the left, this is the low foot before shoeing, what we were presented with. You can see we've got a broken back hoof pastern axis. We had quite a low palmar angle of only 2 degrees. So after shoeing on the right, you can see we created a pretty straight hoof pastern axis. We increased the hoof angle from 47 to 54, and we had a 7-degree palmar angle. Okay, so this is what we created of the low foot.
Did you get to 50-50 around center of rotation on the low foot?
50-50 around center of rotation, yeah. This was the high foot. So you can see with the high foot, we had a straight hoof pastern axis, but we had a long toe. So all we did with the high foot was just get those base proportions a bit better, put a bit of mechanics into the toe, just to relieve the deep digital flex tendon a little bit, because obviously these more upright clubby feet have a lot of tension in the DDFT anyway. So we just wanted to make that life a little bit easier. So what we ended up with, if we look at the 2 feet after shoeing, we ended up with 2 feet, both with a 54-degree angle, both with a 7-degree palmar angle, and both with 50-50 around the center of rotation. Okay, so now what we created was 2 feet that were biomechanically more similar to one another. And as you heard from the blurb, that allowed this horse to maintain his balance much better, stopped all of this, so much of this tweaking and twisting that were happening in the horse, and the horse was much better as a result. So what? And the other thing that we did, though, is we also changed the medial lateral balance. So you can see here, he had poor medial lateral balance, which was causing his feet to sink in one side as well. So not only was his body being pulled one way because of the high-low, but one side of his body was also sinking into the ground as well. So everything was pushing sideways, which is why his saddle was constantly slipping to the right. So, but the point of this for me is that my intervention, as you completely rightly said, Lee, is about treating each foot individually, but making each foot as close to the ideal as it can be as possible for that foot. So if we look at high-low, it's important to understand we can have different types of high-low, right? We can have a club foot and an ideal foot. We can have an ideal foot and a broken back foot, or we can have a club foot and a broken back foot. So the important thing to do is to create the ideal as best as you can for the individual. What you don't do is try and, like, if you've got an ideal foot, you don't try and match it to a broken back foot or a club or a broken forward foot. But as you saw in that previous job, we had a very broken back hoof past an axis that we moved towards an ideal hoof past an axis, and that allowed us to create a much more balanced horse. So that's my approach, is, as you completely in agreement with you, Lee, is try and create as an ideal foot of each individual foot as you can. And if that creates a more matching pair, then that's great. But if it doesn't, then that's the best you can do.
Absolutely. I feel like the biggest messes that I've seen on high-low horses are when people tried to match the foot. You end up with a long, high foot that has the proportions out of balance, and then you've got this over-trimmed, sore low foot, and it's just a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And the also the important thing is that if we go back to this study by Hobbs et al. And Wiggers et al. And some others as well, they showed that the amount of difference between the 2 feet was equated to the amount of twist and pull these horses had. So you do want to pair them up as much as you can, but still by remaining within the individual foot's ideal.
We got some, speaking of that, we've got some questions. Is this a good time?
Yeah, crack. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So Susan responded by, right. Yes. She's saying that the bigger shoulder was on the high foot on hers. Do you find that very often?
And that's interesting, because I found that most of the time the more bulbous shoulder is on the flat foot.
Right.
But it depends what she means by the higher shoulder, because the higher could be this way, which would possibly make sense, but bulbous would be this way. So
Right.
it depends what she means by whether. I found that the more bulbous shoulder, the fuller shoulder, is usually on the lower foot, and the higher one could potentially be on the higher foot. Higher shoulder could be on the higher foot, but it depends which way you're looking at it, I guess.
Right. All right. One more. Well, we actually got quite a few more. Brad Menard, is the shoulders bulging, or is just the top of the scapula pushing up the muscles and tissue because the scapula is locked into a more vertical position compared to the normal 45-degree-ish position? It's a good question, Brad.
Well, it's a very good question, but let's go back and have a look at the picture, because I think some of it is actually muscle development, and some of it is absolutely different angles of scapulas and being pushed in or out. So it's a very good question, and I think it might depend on the individual. But then there's also plenty of other postural things that could be influencing it as well. But I'm not actually sure, and this might just be my ignorance, but I'll look into it a bit more. How much research there is on. There's lots of research that says there's this asymmetry, but I'm not sure how much research actually explains what that asymmetry is actually down to, whether it's muscle development. If anyone can bring more information on that, please do, because I'd love to hear it. And I'm actually going to go and double check my research after that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, that's what I actually find so interesting about what we do, is because we got the basic fundamentals and then we're diving deep on the theory. But what my take home from theory is that's why they call it theory, is that it's really hard to nail a lot of these things down for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So Kit says, is anyone looking at ECVM? So that's equine complex vertebrae malformation. So I think that's meaning congenitally shorter necks, right? Missing a vertebrae. Is that right?
It's so I've done, I think, either done or I'm doing a webinar. I think I've done a webinar looking at ECVM. I'm not an expert on it, but it's a malformation of one of the vertebrae, I believe. And yes, this absolutely could be influencing high-low for sure. Again, I'm not sure how much research there is connecting the two. So I'll do some more research on that. There's some great questions here because they're highlighting stuff for me to go and have a good old deep dive with. So thank you for that, guys. That's great.
So Cash said, that's how I approach my high-low. Thumbs up. Thanks, Cash. Susan says, that's really helpful insight. This is exactly what my carrot and I decided to do when we met on March. Cool. Luke Sheehan says, do you find that most horses do well with matching the low foot to the high foot is the normal foot? If the high foot is the normal foot. Yogi, I'm interested to hear your point on this. Mine would be is that neither one of them are typically normal in this. The low foot, I feel like, is collapsing caudally, and because it's spending most time on that. And the high foot, I feel like the heels are coming in because it spends less time on that foot. So I don't think matching either one of them is a good idea. I think making them each one as an individual, like I said before, is the best plan of attack. Yogi?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. To come back to this slide, the important thing to remember is that we can have different types of high-low. So you can never say match one foot to another foot if you don't know what each of those feet are, right? So, but if let's say the high foot or the higher foot has an ideal straight hoof past an axis, and the low foot has a very broken back hoof past an axis, then absolutely, I've seen pretty much every time the horse will respond positively to raising the heels, straightening the HPA on the broken back one. But I would never, let's say that the high foot is so many degrees steeper than the broken back one that even if you make the broken back one straight, the other one's still higher. I definitely wouldn't carry on chasing it. You stop at a straight hoof past an axis, whichever way you look at it. You don't create something abnormal for the sake of matching. That's the biggest take home for me. But most of the time, yes, if you've got a broken back, low foot, and you've got an ideal high foot, as in a straight hoof past an axis, I've never experienced a horse not liking the broken back hoof past an axis being straightened and matched up.
Yeah, I mean, how would you define a low grade club foot against just an upright foot that's healthy, normal?
Well, I think for me, so technically anything that's more than 3 degrees steeper than the other side is a grade 1 club foot, right? But for me, the defining point is the HPA, is the broken forward HPA. Right. For me, that's when I will not look to follow that. So if the upright foot has a straight hoof past an axis, I'm not massively, that's kind of what I want. Does that make sense?
No, I agree. I was just throwing that in there because my approach is that if it's a low grade club foot and an upright foot, it really doesn't matter.
No.
X-rays on horses like these are crucial in my opinion, because you're going to give that foot whatever it needs anyway, and the process would be ultimately the same. If it's too positive, you're going to work on balancing that palmar angle. If it's too low, you're gonna work on balancing that palmar angle. I don't know. I know it's a weak spot of mine, but I try really hard not to get caught up in labeling things and just focus on helping it.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think, if it's a grade one club foot is I'm not going to worry too much about it if it's still got a straight but I mean, I think the question that I'd like to ask you, Lee, is when you have a club foot, what's your protocol for club feet? Like how much heel are you trimming off? How much are you trying to take away that broken forward hoof pass and axis?
Well, to me, I always struggle with that because it's what does that horse need? Well, it's usually compressing at the toe and it's growing more heel, right? So we need to find a way to create depth. And I'm a huge fan of salad bowl shoes for that reason, because you can create depth at the toe and you can still have pressure at the toe. But as far as taking heels down, well, that's the magic question, really, because most of the time there's a tight deep flexor tendon pulling this horse up. But really, it's if you gap those heels, if you trim too much heel off and there's a gap under your heels, well, you better throw a wedge back on that horse, because you're about to tear him apart, because it's a muscle contracture too, or a check ligament issue that is too tight. But either way, you're going to hurt this horse by putting too much strain on him. That's why when I see people say you need to keep taking more heel off, well, I agree, he's got too much heel, but is it worth crippling your horse over satisfying your eye? I would rather do it over 3 or 4 shoeings, would be my approach on lowering the heel.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you've raised a really important point. Is it's important to understand that when you've got this foot on the left here, when you've got this club foot, is you have an already strained deep flexor unit, and so it does become dangerous to just whack a load of heel off. And like you say, my test is if I ask that horse to stand on that foot, do the heels touch the ground? Because if the heels don't touch the ground, then absolutely I'll always raise that heel back up by the distance that it can't touch the ground. And that's really
Absolutely.
important because I also think that we do want to try and create some frog engagement in those feet.
Absolutely. And Zach actually has a great comment. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up on your questions, everybody here. We get going. So Zach said increase the surface area caudally. I couldn't agree more. Sometimes if you do need to extend that base, you'll take all the heel off, but you're going to have to wedge it back up. But what you'll do is you'll extend the base, how Zach was saying. That's a great comment.
Yeah, and also you'll allow re-engagement of the frog that way as well,
Absolutely.
because you instead of the frog being deep up inside those heels, the frog is now more level with the heels, and then you can get some engagement there as well. So that then helps with the frog health and that kind of aspect. So yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you guys there. So
okay, let's get caught up here. So Susan says, really helpful insight and the approach my farrier and I decided to do this year. Sweet. Jack Massey is back. Hello, Jack. If the high-low is only mild, does this change your thinking on long-term trimming to bring them close to even? I would say that the whole point that I'm trying to drive home, Jack, is I'm not really worried about even. I'm just worried about trying to have best versions of each one. You, real quick, Yogi?
yeah, I agree. I think if you can make subtle changes from non-invasive trimming enough to pair them up, then absolutely go for it. If you're not doing something that's going to hurt, like if you've got very subtle high-low, and all you need to do is trim a little bit of heel off the high one and trim more toe off the low one, and you match them up, yeah, go for it. Like there's no harm in that because it's subtle and it's just sensible trimming. So yeah, but yeah, I agree. At the same time, I agree with you. It's not about pair. We do want to try and pair them up, but within sensible intervention logic.
Yeah. So Canyon said, as a question for you, Yogi, with the package on this horse, was it a frog support, rim, full pad? What was it?
This one, yes, it was a full frog support wedge pad. That's is what it was,
Perfect.
with
And
plenty
then,
of packing support.
yeah, trying to push it back up a little bit from the.
Yeah, trying to just engage that frog. I don't put any wedges on without frog support anyway. Otherwise, kind of defeats the object for me.
I approve
Um,
that.
yeah, so so it's elevated 3D frog support pad
Nice.
with dental impression material. Yeah.
All right. So Lon Crane says, looks like it's longer vertically to the ground from the center of rotation on the lower hoof than it is on the right. Would you put a flat pad on that foot to level it? You must be talking about the high foot, I guess.
Let me read it.
Talking about the low. I'm sorry, Lon. We got behind. Tell me which.
Looks like it's longer vertically to the ground from the center of rotation on the lower hoof than the right hoof. I'll be honest with you. I didn't measure that vertical depth, and the X-rays are not necessarily calibrated to be exactly the same. We'd have to calibrate the X-rays to take that measurement, so I'm not going to be able to answer you on that one. But that low foot already has a pad, right? So, right. Yeah.
All right. Susan says, Yogi, are the images you're sharing are they in your Facebook library?
Yeah. So much of the images I'm sharing are on my Facebook library, and also a lot of these images and discussion points are from previous webinars and those kind of things as well. So, and articles on the website as well. So,
okay, Luke,
I've actually done an article on high-low on the website. So if anyone wants to go and read that after this, yeah, please be welcome.
Nice. Luke Sheehan says, answered. Thank you. You're welcome, Pard. Laszlo says, I just want to say I love everything you guys do. I love the way you guys are describing everything. You guys are one of the best sites. Thank you, Laszlo.
Thanks, man.
Zach says, can we talk about an open-heeled wedge application? I believe it's disengaging the frog in an already compromised wall. Why are there so many people using these applications on low feet without proper frog engagement? We are only exacerbating the compression. I could not agree more, Zach. You need to make some banners about that.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir there, Zach. Absolutely. Like, I've done articles on this about how frog function and hemodynamic mechanism are vital for developing the back of the foot. We talked about that as well in a couple of chats ago. But yeah, one of the main functions of the caudal hoof is to mitigate the weight of the horse coming down through the soft tissues. And if that downward force through the soft tissues isn't met by the ground reaction force coming the other way through the frog, then that's why we get all this prolapse and this constant collapse of the caudal hoof. So you're absolutely spot on there. Wedges applied without re-engagement of the frog is just asking for the causes of the crushed heels and prolapsed soft tissues to be exacerbated and become even worse. So you're absolutely spot on there, Zach.
More on this. So Sarah Lyon says, no frog support from what I have experienced also contributes to prolapsed frog.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's looking for the ground that's falling through the shoe and the heels are getting pushed up in the shoe. But
exactly.
Canyon, you got a great comment on this. So did you, Sarah. We all support that. He says, agreed, probably because the 3-degree shoe is faster than a frog sport pad. I would assume you're talking about barrel horses, Canyon. Is that right? I would say.
I think it means it's quicker and faster to apply.
Oh, I need a confirmation on that, Canyon. Do you mean it's easier to apply, or do you think it actually makes a horse faster than a frog sport pad? Because I can get behind both of those. But Zach says, can this be deemed detrimental? Absolutely. But there's also a reality there. I think if you go back and watch our very first presentation and my presentation at the summit, it shows this. And ultimately why I kept having heel failure is because I was setting the shoes back. and I was creating heel failure myself on a low foot. When I changed how I trimmed and shod that horse, suddenly he's doing good in flat shoes, right? With just better trim and shoeing. So point being is that barrel horses, in my opinion, don't run as good with pads on. At least half of them don't. Half of them need them and have to have them. So that is what it is. But the reality is, if you get that foot healthy, you can kind of put whatever on it for a shoeing or two before it fails again. So if you had a really big show like a national finals rodeo or something, $1 million, $100,000 event, well, you could put whatever on that horse that they ran better and then get that hoof healthy later, much like Yogi showed us that amazing foot. I still remember that foot. That could be on a poster. Well, he had to do a lot of conditioning to get that foot there, is my take.
Yeah, definitely. Lon Cranes I would put a flat pad on the high hoof. Actually, if you look at my radiograph here, you can see I do have a flat pad on that high hoof. And I also packed it with a much higher shore than I did on the flat foot, because one of the things that I want to get out of these high feet with like these contracted heels is I want to get as much expansion and contraction of the back of the foot and frog engagement as I can. So that's why I put a flat pad on, and I put on like a 35 to 40 shore packing, which is a nice hard shore to engage that frog. Whereas on the low foot, I actually put like a 15, 20 shore packaging, because on the low foot it's some more of a supportive process, whereas on the high foot it's an engagement process. I want it to force some expansion and contraction. So
you want some movement.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point there, Lon. And as you can see from the radiograph, I did put a flat pad on the high one, and it was packed with a higher shore packing. Is that something you do as well, Lee?
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're a lot of times, like if you're dealing with an injury, a heart bar shoe is really about the only thing you can do to transfer load successfully. But we've also found that the higher shore, like the Mustad Medium, that's a 35 shore, that is some very rigid stuff. And on laminitic, you'd absolutely cripple it. But if you're needing more support, that's pretty good stuff. Well, we use the soft the majority of the time, which is 25, and I think the extra soft is 15. Is that right? But
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, there's lots of options there. But you brought something up where I want to go next.
Here you go.
Before we do, Sarah says, thank you, Lee and Yogi. You both answered questions. The question of the use of prolonged rail wedges causing more issues long term. Good. Canyon says both. I would say if your purpose for shoeing a horse is because it's faster, please don't shoe horses anymore. You need to have the goal of helping the horse should be number one. And if you takes too long, charge for your time, figure it out. What do you think about that, Yogi?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the problem that only becomes a problem if you're not charging for the extra time, right? If you're charging for the extra time, then it's not a problem. And the horse's welfare and the development of that foot's always got to come before speed, for sure, in terms of shoeing. But he's also saying that they're faster in performing as well. So do you want to take that one, Lee?
Well, I believe I already covered that immediately when I assumed that's what he said. But yeah, that's a reality. Like when you're talking about legit barrel horses with real horsewomen riding them, or horsemen, yeah, about 50% of the time they'll come in and say, I don't like the way he feels. So if that horse has to have it, well, then we got to get creative, half pads, temporary inserts, something. But I would encourage that if there's any off-season, rehab them like I was saying before. But we've already been here. So if I didn't answer that, I think, Canyon, I think you understand. But if anybody else doesn't get it, please comment. Susan says, thank you for your answers. It's an excellent topic. It's certainly helpful for me right now. Luke Sheehan says, mechanics and functionality more than matching. Yes, sir. Another deal we have to get radiographs on. Yes, the radiographs make a lot of jobs easier. Okay, now what I want to dive into you with, Yogi. Let's talk about blood flow differences in each foot. So, interesting. So, while I'm practicing for my TE, I've been taking Heather Beauchamp's courses. If you guys ever get the chance to take the TE, she does an amazing job, wonderful woman. But we got to talking about blood flow, and she about nailed me to the wall for this, but she was educating me. But it's a great conversation when you talk about blood flow. Does it cause it? Does it help it? I don't think that trimming and shoeing cause this. It can manage it, but it can't cause it. I think that excessive heel length doesn't create a high foot. I think that just the shorter neck, the grazing periods, I think that causes it. But if we're going to talk about blood flow, I think that, or I also believe that riding in one direction only can cause it. Just putting too much pressure on one foot rather than trimming and shoeing causing it. But blood flow, what about that? So you could look at the high foot and you could say, well, the frog isn't getting engaged, so now it's not getting enough blood flow at the back of the foot, so now the heels are coming in, right? But you could also say it's compressing at the toe. And then the low foot, you could also say, well, the blood flow is compressing at the back of the foot, and that's why it's failing. But why isn't it becoming a laminitic then, if that's really the case? Point is I don't think it's a blood flow issue. What do you think, Yogi?
Well, there's blood flow issues in terms of, okay, let's look at the research, right? There's research that shows that increased DDFT tension, yeah, reduces blood flow to the back of the foot.
Right.
Okay, that's been shown by, let me try and remember this name, Mieszkowski et al. And also Van Epps also showed this in terms of supporting limb laminitis, right? So if you have a supporting limb that is consistently loading the DDFT, then that is going to restrict blood flow to the back half of the foot, or the whole foot, but the back half of the foot. And so you can extrapolate that into, if you have a very broken back hoof past axis, that extra tension in DDFT is going to reduce blood flow to the very area that's failing, which is the back half of the foot. So this is why, for me, re-establishing phalangeal alignment is actually so important for developing the back of the foot, because it does actually improve blood flow to the back of the foot and the germinative layer of the heels and those kind of things.
Right.
So blood flow is a factor in high-low, but I think more for the low foot in terms of the development of the back of the heels, of the back of the foot and the heels. In terms of the high foot, I'm not sure that. I think the expansion and contraction is more of a factor than blood flow in the back of the foot. And I mean, you still
meaning get it healthy, meaning.
just get it moving. There's actually so I've tested this in practice. I've had and I've got some images somewhere. I had a very club foot with very contracted heels, and I shod it in. This is going to sound cruel, right? But the horse was fine. I shod it in a Shaw 50 packing.
Woo!
Shaw 50. There was this packing that came out from a local shoe supplier, and it was 50. And I was going to try this in this horse. It had such contracted heels. Anyway, I measured the heel width before and after shoeing it in this packing, and the heels expanded by a measurable amount. And there was also shown by Mark Watson's fellowship thesis, actually, as well, where he had positive heart bars, increased heel width, in contracted feet. That has actually been shown there as well. So I think it's actually the physical, when you physically push on that frog and digital cushion, you do create physical expansion and contraction of the back of the foot. So I think it's more to do with that functional movement than it is blood flow. But obviously, blood flow and functional movement go hand in hand. So there is, which is probably why when you do get some of those movement, the frog itself actually looks healthier because it's getting more blood supply. So they do go hand in hand for sure.
Absolutely. And so I was just kind of giggling to myself because I knew I was going to get you going there. But that I think that is so tricky because it's like yes, but no, but sometimes because the blood flow is always important, but does it cause it? So the injury is if there's an injury on one foot, you could absolutely create a higher foot on the opposite limb. Would you agree?
Sorry, I was reading Ramon's comment there because he was came in with the venograms, which was
Here he goes.
which
Throwing
and
wrenches, Ramon.
he's just absolutely validated what I was saying about the blood flow there, because he showed that when you take venograms, you can physically see that the low foot has a lot more blood flow to the toe area than the heel area, versus the high foot, which has less blood flow to the toe area, which is possibly why the heels grow faster than the toe. So blood flow's absolutely got something to do with it. So sorry about, I missed what you were saying because I was reading that.
Ramon, we're so glad you get in here. This is awesome. We ought to have Ramon jump in on some of the vet questions, like the vet comments that we get.
I'm gonna have Ramon on another webinar soon. I think he's
Yeah,
he's just sent me some great X-rays today that I asked him for. So
that's awesome. Sarah says, "What's the Shore 50 application?" That would be twice as firm as a standard dental impression material, is what I would say. So very rigid. Yogi, can you expound upon that?
yeah, so Shore basically means how rigid it is, and you measure it with like a needle thing, like a Shore needle. So a 50 is pretty much, I don't think you would want to go much harder than that. So most Shores are, I think the standards are 35, 25, 15-ish, aren't they? Something like that.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, so this was a very hard material. So that's what the Shore means.
So Cash, oh man, I like your input, man. So Cash says the feet always compact with earth and create support. I've got a huge study on one of the people commenting showing nothing but improvement. Horses were able to be enjoyed after not being ridden for years. Man, that's awesome. You know, that's one thing to think about is what the footing is that these horses are going to be standing in. And a lot of times when you pick the feet out, they're packed just like it had a pour-in pad in it. So cool.
So Susan's asked, so with good farrier work, can the shoulder asymmetry ever be improved? So that's an interesting question, because what we have to understand about high-low is that we can change the mechanics and the angles of the feet, but we're not necessarily affecting the cause of that asymmetry, because that asymmetry could be coming from up down, or it could be coming from down up. So I think it's an interesting question, because I think the answer is I think it depends, and I think we need to do more research on it to establish that, and also how far down the road is it, and those kind of things. So
absolutely. So yeah, I would say that you can maintain it, but it's going to be really hard to permanently change that horse. My backbone on that is always, if man didn't make it, man can't fix it, but you can maintain it. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we we got some more questions. One lady that we helped with the high-low says, Susan Maurer says, I'll forever be thankful for the work you did on our Moses's high-low. That was actually a really cool horse that the high foot got so sensitive that we had to step up to an aluminum plate as a pad cupped away from the sole, but really did well. And just footing is always the concern, like where are you riding your horse?
Yeah.
Ramon says, invite me to one of these winking muscle face. Well, we don't want you to make us look bad. Just kidding.
Absolutely we will.
Hey, yeah, Sarah Winkleman says, hey, Lee, what about my case study? Any comments about Rory? Any new ideas for him? So Sarah Winkleman is one of the best barrel racers in the world, and she's got the coolest horse named Rory. I really thought he should have won Horse of the Year. She ended up 16th a couple years ago, and he is high-low. And just what's cool about Sarah is she trims feet barefoot style as good or better than a lot of farriers do. So she can maintain this horse. She lives a long ways away in Minnesota, and when she comes and sees us, we'll show him. And when she's rodeoing, and we just shot him just how we were explaining here, and he gets along pretty good that way. So yeah, that was a fun case study. More questions. Alice says, thank you for these presentations. They are incredibly informative. Trouble seeing the live.
Ramon's put, especially in low feet, I think biplanar trim is highly undervalued. Being able to trim the foot in front of the wider part of the foot at a different angle to the heels and add mechanics to the shoe wedge alignment can help a lot in managing difficult cases. So there Ramon's talking about banana shoeing, basically.
He's talking about Sammy Pittman is what you mean, right, Ramon? Just kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah, and Ramon's done, I know he's done talks on the effectiveness of banana shoeing and biplanar trimming on building mass. And I think that's the important part of it, is that it enables mass to be built. There's been a lot of negative comments when I've posted about banana shoeing before, but in a therapeutic environment where you're trying to build mass, it is incredibly useful.
Absolutely. Like Ramon, I know you've done some incredible work, and you deal with a whole nother animal down there in Costa Rica with the distortion and the wet environment. But Dr. Sammy Pittman has also done amazing work, and you can extend the base like we're talking about. You can still take pressure off of heels. Like the banana shoe absolutely has its place, just like a lot of other things.
Garrett said, I'm sorry, I might have missed it. I've seen you talk about negative plantar angles improving after kissing spine. Do you see improvement with high-low after surgery or body work along with good shoeing? So that's an interesting one, because I haven't necessarily talked about negative plantar angles improving after kissing spines per se, but I have talked about how a poor posture, poor as in camped under hind limbs, perpetuates negative plantar angles. So that could be improved through addressing kissing spine and issues that are creating a camped under posture. But to answer the question, I think the answer is always, in all of these hoof body connections and issues, as farriers, we can deal with our end of the equation, but it should always be a discussion with the body worker, with the vet, to understand whether these things are being caused by other physiological issues further up in the body, and whether those issues should be dealt with simultaneously or before or after. All these always have to be conversations to be had. And some of these things, certainly high-low, might just be a case of forever management, because it might not be something that can be fixed. it might be conformational, etc., etc. So you raise a good point, and the point is that there's always a conversation to be had between us working on the bottom and everyone else working on the top. And they do, and they will and do always massively affect one another. So thank you for bringing that up, Garrett.
Yogi, you got a question right below Garrett, if you can see that. Garrett, what I would say is that what I talk about is kissing spine is a vet's job, and anything up above like that is not in our realm. But I do know and have seen that negative plantar angles, once you improve them, a lot of those problems go away or get better. Maybe not go away is a great word, but I do think that the majority of horses that have kissing spines have negative plantar angles. So one thing that a farrier can do is help with that. And you say kissing spines, I say x-ray the hind feet. And most of the time the posture, they'll be standing under, and then you help that horse and he starts backing up and standing where he's supposed to be.
Absolutely. I mean, everything you're talking about there is in my published research paper, where we show that there's clearly a link between negative plantar angles, posture, and then pathology along the dorsal myofascial line, which includes the hock, the hamstrings, the glutes, the SI, and kissing spine. So there's a direct link all the way along that dorsal myofascial line there. So that's great.
So we got more questions. TJ Jones says, excellent subject. Thank you for your time and effort to help the farrier trade. Harry Serio, the man, says, thank you for sharing this and giving us a heads up. Definitely worth tuning into. Zach Dinnan says that horses that are judged on gait, such as ranch riders and other pleasure/show horses, benefit from leaving the upright foot toe longer in length than the down foot. Is that a question? Horses that are judged on gait, such as ranch riders and other pleasure or show horses, benefits by leaving the upright foot toe longer in length than down. Then he also says, as far as the transition from breakover to stride, high foot leaves the ground much quicker than the low foot. What is the best way to match the pendulums like limbs? I've seen show horses wear an open heel wedge on the low foot and a flat on the high foot. What are your thoughts on the setup like this? Well, we talked about the open heel on a low foot, and we don't disagree with that. To be honest, I don't work on a lot of judged horses, more performance horses. But I think that matching them, we already covered, is always detrimental. So that's one thing I don't like about the judged anything, is that when you go to looking for movement and not the best interest of the horse, I think that's a problem. But what do you think, Yogi?
Well, let me just clarify that matching them isn't always the wrong thing to do, as long as you're not turning something from ideal into something that's not ideal. Okay, because as we saw in this case here, which is still on the screen, if we have a broken back hoof pastern axis and we match it to an ideal hoof pastern axis by straightening the hoof pastern axis, then that's not detrimental. But if we start to try and pitch that foot even more forward and create a broken forward hoof pastern axis to match the angle of a higher foot, then that does become detrimental, because then we're going to increase strain on the suspensory and those kind of things. So we match them as close as we can while keeping them within their own physiological norm. Okay, that's important.
You missed a good shot to use your new American saying, Yogi.
What's that? God bless America?
No, you'd be robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's yeah, that's always true. Always true.
Yeah, and what that means is that if you're overstressing something, the hoof is an amazing built creation, and it has a push for every pull. So if you're overdoing something, somebody's paying for that, is all that means.
Absolutely.
Cash says, communication is key. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and all of them are effective. Monty Lewis, world champ. I thought Monty Lewis was just famous for being the only guy that won the world with a poly rope, Cash. But that's a sidebar. Okay, back to high low.
Okay, so
Go ahead.
you can see more questions than me. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing so many questions, but
Well, I posted a teaser on Farrier 101. And then I did put a picture of a high-low horse before we shot it. And I just shot it the other day for the third time. And oh my goodness, it's something about the third time, like I feel like that's about the time we get them lined out. I just wish I'd have taken more pictures.
Earlier you said something to me while I was reading Ramon's comment. I don't know if it's worth revisiting that, was it, or not?
Well, if I can remember what it is, as soon as Ramon gets in, starts talking about venograms, I'm suddenly distracted.
So have we got any more questions, chaps or folks, ladies and gents?
How about what they want to see next time? So next week, I'm not sure if I'll be able to get on since I'll be at the AFA convention, but what would you guys like to see the next time we decide to do this? It'll be as soon as possible. Uh-oh, the doctor is back. Ramon.
So for future discussion, maybe one reason rocker shoe mechanics may sometimes face resistance is the terminology used to describe them. Referring to the shoe as a banana can unintentionally trivialize a concept that is fundamentally about managing loads, moments, and mechanical efficiency within the distal limb. They're valuable in the high-low horse. Yes, Ramon, that's very, very true. And actually, I was been working with Ramon on understanding the banana shoe from the point of balance concept, because the point of balance concept actually shows how and why the banana shoe works. But if we change the name from a banana shoe to a equilibrium creating shoe, or something like that, I'm sure we can come up with a name, Ramon and I, to explain it in the technical aspect of what it does, rather than an anecdotal name of banana shoe. Then that'll definitely help. But it's a great subject to talk about. Maybe the three of us can talk about banana shoes at some point.
That'd be cool. Well, we apologize for calling a rocker a banana shoe, if that's an issue, Ramon.
No, I don't think he was having a go at us. I think I posted about banana shoes, and there seems to be a lot of it presses a lot of buttons, but I think it comes down to a lack of understanding of when a banana shoe is applied, when it should be applied, the mechanics of it, and the benefits of it. So it would be a good subject to cover for sure. So let's have a think of doing that.
We should do that. Ramon, I think he just said that he's in. He said, awesome idea. So the one thing that I've seen with rockers is Dr. Sammy Pittman is a good friend of mine, and he's an amazing farriery, meaning a farrier and a vet, much like Ramon. But there's a learning curve. There's a comment on here. Cash says he stays away from rockers because they're finicky to create consistent comfort. Yeah, it's because they're hard. And that's where the biplanar trim is what they're talking about. So not just one angle, it's rocking at the heel and rocking at the toe. I was trying to get into that. And if you try to put a flat trim into a rocker, it's like a square peg in a round hole. You will have a lame horse. Ask me how I know, but you can fix it. So the trim is very, very important on those, and learning, like anything, learning how to do them correctly is key. But so yeah, that would be a good conversation, huh?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm lucky. Well, I say lucky. I shoe mainly high level performance horses at their peak. So I used a lot of mechanics in terms of roller shoes and reverse wedges on the heels and stuff, which is a similar kind of mechanics. but I don't actually put on a lot of banana shoes because my view on them is that they are largely a therapeutic application, and I know Ramon deals with a lot of laminitis and a lot of very thin soles, this, that, and the other. So it'd be interesting to get a different perspective on them from that, because I use similar mechanics, but I don't put a lot of banana shoes on just purely because I prefer shoeing high level top like performance horses and winning gold cups rather than um, fixing horses that are on their deathbed from laminitis. But
Right. No, I agree with you. So there's some great comments on here. So do you want to look at Laszlo's, and I'll answer Rustin? Do you see
yeah,
Laszlo? Okay, so Rustin says, have you ever put a frog sport pad upside down to encourage expansion on the upright foot whenever the ground engages the packing material? So question is have you ever put a frog sport pad upside down? No, absolutely not. But I do have a funny story for you. So I got really burnt out on doing clinics. And for the reason of the last one I did was in Maui. It was so cool. Good people over there, friends of ours. We ended up doing a clinic. It was fun. This horse needs really, I don't remember. He had some type of failure. And I'm like, well, he needs a heart bar shoe or a frog sport pad or something. And he had something very serious. That's why I wanted a bar shoe. And he's like, well, I don't got a bar shoe. He's like, well, let's make one. He's like, oh, we can't do that. I'm like, well, what are we going to do? He said, frog sport pad. I said, okay, sounds good. Bring me your shoe before you put the pad on it. And ultimately looked at the shoe and all that. We finally decided to put the pad on. I said, yeah, put the pad on. He puts them on upside down and then tries to put them on the horse. And then I said, no, those aren't going to work. And he says, these are my last pads. And then I was like, done with it. But so I'm a little scarred on that. But no, I've never done that. But I think that anytime you're loading the foot, it is so important to have even pressure. That's why dental impression material shore ratings are so important, meaning giving that horse the substance that he needs, the rigidity. And so just putting a pad upside down is not self-conforming at all, like dental impression material. We even put clay under our dental impression material to further make it comfortable for the horse. So I would have to answer you, Rustin, with absolutely no.
fair enough. So Laszlo's asked, I think what he's asking is, have we discussed appropriate balance positions of shoes, as in heel support versus toe support, etc.? Now, we actually talked about that really in our first chat, didn't we, Lee, about balance around center of rotation versus balance around point of balance and appropriate base proportion. So I think that's kind of covered in that previous talk, Laszlo. So if you want to go back, but you can absolutely, I've got plenty of webinars and articles on dorsopalmar balance and those kind of things. So you can go
you also wrote an entire paper on it. Like that that first one we did, as far as just basic shoeing applications for whatever reasons that you have, whether this is therapeutic or performance, that I think that first one's hard to beat. And I think that would bring a lot of clarity just watching that. And if you really want to dive into it, Yogi and his partner dove into the point of balance, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you can go and read that paper. It's it's very technical, but if you can get through it, it's actually very, very informative as well.
I would watch the first one, then read the paper, then watch the first one again. And but so I'm sorry, I'm going to ruin this name. Can you, Zyandra? Maybe.
Yeah.
How would you help a horse that has a navicular in his high hoof, his low foot?
Assist on the navicular bone.
Yeah, but he commented above it though.
Oh.
How would you help a horse that had navicular in his high hoof? His low has no signs of navicular. And then she says, how would you help a horse with a cyst on the navicular bone in his high hoof? And the other is regular angles with no signs of navicular. Would love to know how to keep him comfortable and also help with his contracted heels.
You want to go for that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could do a talk on shoeing for navicular too, but real briefly, just to answer you. So most of the time, if they have a cyst, they don't like frog pressure. And the number one thing for me working on a navicular horse is finding out if they like frog pressure. So what I learned this from Grant Moon, but take a roll vet wrap, take about a foot out of it, crunch the roll in half, put the vet wrap over the frog, take the excess and wrap it around the foot and let him stand on it and watch him. If he moves around and then stands on it and likes it, licks his lips, sighs, puts his head down, eyes soften, he loves it. If he's taking pressure off it, he hates it. So I would bet on your cyst that he doesn't like it, in which case I actually have a video on Olsen Equine about a month ago on Facebook and YouTube that we tried everything else that we could do, and the one thing that did work is just what Ramon and Yogi and I are talking about doing. Is I ultimately made a banana shoe out of a wedge shoe and rockered the toe of the foot around the center of rotation and got it excessively high. And I broke the cardinal sin of using no frog pressure, and this horse is doing fabulous. So there is a place for everything. But the secret, which we can dive into next time, this will be a lot of fun, is the application of a rocker shoe or banana, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to suggest the same thing, that this would be a perfect place for banana shoe, although we're not allowed to call it that anymore. We'll find a new name. But the other thing you could possibly think of doing is a mid-bar shoe as well. So you're then directly stopping the ground reaction forces going directly onto the navicular by having a mid-bar. That's certainly helped in past with horses that don't want to have frog pressure in that area.
So for a mid-bar, you're talking about going from like the last nail hole medial to lateral just across for protection over the navicular region.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Another thing you could do is you could put a heart bar shoe on for protection, but gap it to where it's not touching the frog. And that's another option. Another option would be an aluminum plate. I almost think of it as a performance heart bar because it's lighter and you can pack it accordingly, but ultimately no pressure on the navicular bone. Would you agree, Yogi?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Looks like does anybody want to know about rocker shoes? Would that be a good one to talk about with Dr. Costa Rica? And not banana shoes. We're not saying banana shoes, Ramon.
If anyone's got any other suggestions of what they'd like us to talk about, well, let's get a list going and we can start planning ahead anyway. So next week we possibly won't be doing it, Lee, because you're at the convention, right? But we will come back soon as we can after that. Rocker shoes for side bone. Yeah, so people are quite happy with the rocker shoe idea. So we have to make sure Ramon can make the same time as us. We'll get him on.
Yeah, Jimmy Petty, it's good to see you. Yeah, he likes it.
And somebody else has said just navicular in general, so we can definitely add that to the list, can't we? Have a good old chat about navicular. It's definitely talk about that.
That'd be cool. Well, I think this went great. The involvement is awesome. Zandra, I hope I'm saying your name right. Sorry if I'm not. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We would love a call one day on navicular as well. Sweet.
Okay, so it looks like rocker shoe and then navicular.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks for getting on, everybody. Good job, Yogi.
Thank you, buddy. Good to see you again, and good luck at the convention and your exams.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah.
It's a good time. Lots of good presentations there. If you're a farrier, think about going. It's pretty awesome. I'm the MC of the presentation hall, and those guys come see me if you're there. Say hi.
MC Olsen in the house.
In the house.
Right. God bless America.
And God bless everybody.
See you all soon, bye, guys.
See ya.